guys, welcome to my cozy productive writing vlog where today I'm going to talk about the books that I'm going to read in November. Now, I chose a weird set of books for this month. I have a really strange love-hate relationship with each and every one of them. So I have started every single one of them and finished none. It's very strange, and I'll get into that in a bit. So first up is Vida Nostra by Marie and Sergei Dyachenko. I fell in love with this book from the moment I saw it. I mean, how can you not love this book from that cover? That cover is gorgeous. So I picked it up and I started reading it, but it was at a point in my life where I had to put it down because life was just insane. And I don't actually remember the particulars of it, but I do remember thinking, I will put this down and I will finish reading it later. And later turns out to be now, and I'm pretty sure that's at least a year later, so bad me. So the premise of the story is there's a middle-aged mother and her teenage daughter, and they have decided to go on vacation to the beach. Now, while they're there, the teenage daughter is, I want to say, accosted, confronted. She's approached by this very strange man who asks her to do something even stranger. And she does what any normal, sane person would do. She says, "No, I don't know who you are. Please go away." But then after she refuses him, the world just gets weird. This vacation never ends. It just kind of like starts looping in like this weird Groundhog Day situation. And she eventually figures out that the only way to stop it is to tell the man, "Yes, I'll do what you want." So she does it. It involves swimming out to a pier every morning at like 4 a.m. and then she vomits up coins afterwards. It's very strange. And then after this happens, he basically forces her to change her college preferences. Rather than going to this prestigious college that she had chosen and she and her mother had been working towards, he makes her go to this weird college out in the backwoods. And her hands are tied, like she can't do anything. She has to follow his instructions. So she does this, she gets there, and it turns out it's a magical college. And I know what you're thinking, there's like the Harry Potter vibes, but there really isn't. It's very dark and it's very adult, and no YA person should be reading this story because it gets very strange, and that's kind of where I left it. I had to put it down and I haven't finished it since then. So here's to hoping that I actually can finish it this time. So next up is Persephone Station. Now, my weird love-hate relationship with this book is I love the book, I kind of hate the author. And let me explain. So I started the book and it's gorgeous, it's wonderful. And I loved it so much, I reached out to the author and I was like, "Hey, I have a podcast where I talk to authors about their books. And I'm trying to branch into more A-line authors because at the moment I'm doing self-published authors. And I'd like to get more into traditionally published authors and get that viewpoint, but also just I want to talk to authors whose books that I love and who I'm reading." And at first, Stina Lich was very nice. She was, "Yes, that sounds great. Here's my email address. We'll get together. We'll pick a time." So I sent her an email and then the woman ghosted me. And that left such a sour taste in my mouth. Like, I didn't just email her once. I ended up emailing her, I think maybe 3 times. And then I was trying to be very professional and very nice about it. And at the end, I think the last one I basically said that I've been trying to contact you. I have not received a response. If you were interested, please contact me. Otherwise, I'll leave you alone, basically is what that ended up being. So the woman never got back to me, and that left such a sour taste in my mouth that I couldn't finish the book, which is really sad because the book was going really well and I loved it. I don't know if it's what the author intended, but I get kind of Firefly vibes from it. It's sci-fi, kind of outer rim deal. There's a lot of gunslinging, and the book centers around a group of mercenaries who get embroiled in something above their pay grade, and things just start snowballing from there. So I've decided to kind of like swallow my distaste for the author and finish a book that I was very obviously loving up until that point. So speaking of authors that I have a weird love-hate relationship, next up on our list is One for My Enemy by Olive Lee Blake. Now, the saga of Olive Blake starts way back when I accidentally stumbled upon one of her other books. And I do not remember the name of that book, and it's on my bookshelf somewhere. I'll have to go look it up and put the name in the description below. But I started reading that and I loved it so much. It was so interesting and the characters were so unique that I immediately went out and bought 2 more of her books. I bought one for my enemy and the Atlas 6. And this is when the Atlas 6 had just come out. Like, it wasn't even popular on TikTok yet. I think it must have been brand new by the time when I accidentally stumbled upon it, because I didn't even know who she was. And then I contacted her because she was an indie author and I had a new podcast. I was like, hey, do you want to be on this? I talk to authors, blah, 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 everything I just talked about. And I got back a very firm but polite no. That was a really big blow to the ego. But the really big problem in this whole situation was that first book I started reading. When I had loved it so much in the beginning, in the middle, not so much. It fell apart. Like, it stopped being interesting and just started getting complicated and bogged down and very hard to read. And I abandoned it. I never finished it. And I tried reading the Atlas 6. Same thing happened. By the time I got to the middle, things just fell apart for me and I couldn't get engaged. So that leaves one for my enemy. I have read exactly 2 pages of this book, and while the premise sounds really amazing, it's modern Romeo and Juliet meets magical elements, and that sounds amazing. I'm really apprehensive and I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this book. I hope I'll love it, but I have hoped I'll love every one of her other books that I've read, and I've ended up hating them. So I don't know, fingers crossed that I like this one, because I hate to say that I hated any author's work because I know how much work goes into them. And I don't know, clearly she doesn't care because she doesn't want to be on my podcast. I don't know, I'm still bitter. So the last book on this list is one that I know I'm going to get a lot of flack for, but it is Fellowship of the Ring. Now, growing up, I tried to read this, but it wasn't really my style. I read other fantasy books much more easily. That sounds really bad. That sounds like that's bad English. But I read other books more readily that were in the fantasy genre, and I loved them. But I had a little brother, and my little brother loves Tolkien. He loves all these books. So I have seen the movies. I have seen probably every video adaptation of these movies and The Hobbit because he liked them so much, and I know I enjoy the story. I know the story has good elements because I know from those other sources, but I cannot seem to get through Fellowship of the Ring. And clearly, if I can't get through Fellowship of the Ring, I haven't touched the other 2, because that's all that description that gets to me. I feel like I'm just wading through mud. It's so slow and I can't get through it. And I've always had this really hard time of getting through it. So recently I was at my favorite used bookstore when I came across this version of it. Now, this is a beautiful cover. Mine is more beat up than this picture, but it's still it was so lovely that I had to have it. I had to own this little piece of beauty. And I came home and I did some Google research, and it turns out it's part of a whole set. And it's so amazing that you put all 3 covers together and they make one large picture. It reminds me of Triptych from my arts history days. But I love things like that. And I was so obsessed with this that I told my husband all I wanted for Christmas was these other 2 books in the series. I went out and went to eBay and found the other 2 books and bought them, and then I told my husband, don't worry about it, I've already bought them, they're on their way, but you can wrap them. So that's how obsessive I got about this book. So in any case, I figured if I'm this obsessive about the cover, then I should probably give it another go and try to read the book. Now, luckily or unluckily, depending on your point of view about this, I am going on vacation with extended family for 10 days. And I'm going to have nothing to do in my downtime except read this book, because I'm going to bring this book with me, and that's the only thing I can do. So I am pushing myself to try to get through this book. And hopefully I will this time, and hopefully I will love it as much as I know I love the story, and try to just wade through the mountains of description that Tolkien throws at us. So there you have it, the books I'm going to try to read this month. I cannot guarantee that I'm going to finish any of them. I'm going to try really hard though. If any of these looked interesting to you and you want to see a review of them at the end, like how I felt about them or why I couldn't finish them, and hopefully that doesn't happen. But if you want to see any of my thoughts on any of them, then leave me a comment in the notes section below, and I will try to make that the one that I review at the end. So if you've made it this far, you're amazing and I love you. And I will see you guys on Monday when I start wading through the comments that the beta readers are starting to come back in about my novel, Dark Witch Rising.